What is up, No Walls Podcast? My name is Chris Riley, and I get the great honor and privilege of being your producer here on the No Walls Podcast. So if you're here on YouTube, if you're here on Spotify, we are so thankful for you to show up, come and check this thing out. And so if you are here on YouTube, go give this thing a subscribe, go give this thing a like, and go give this thing a comment because that helps us out a ton. And so today we got two amazing people, two amazing pastors. We got Preston Grace and we got Taylor Otterbine.
Let's go.
You are amazing, bro.
You're amazing, bro.
Like, if I'm flipping through the words in the dictionary, like I'm not finding one that better fits you than amazing.
Well, thank you, bro. If I'm flipping through the dictionary, I'm finding one that's better than incredible. That fits you better. So
incredibly.
Yeah.
We both know word for Chris just swag, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Appreciate that.
You are the definition of effortlessly cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I would trade you words if I could.
Trade us words.
If I can.
Trade amazing for effortlessly cool or swag.
For swag.
Yeah, that's fair.
I
think I would too.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
We have a guy at Queen City who comes to the drive-thru, and he calls me his nickname. My name's Cool Chris.
Cool Chris.
Yeah, so I kind of own that now.
That's called alliteration.
Alliteration.
Yeah,
I like that.
Some English stuff in there.
Cool Chris.
Cool Chris.
Cool Chris.
Pretty sick. Super sick.
You should put it on business cards.
I should. My name's just Cool Chris.
Like, what is this for? Just to let you know.
I'm going to change
that I'm
my
really
name
cool.
to Cool Chris.
Literally put nothing on it but Cool Chris.
What does this do for me?
And just a random QR code to something crazy.
Something random.
Like to some off the wall Sheen link. It's like Cool Chris, and then it's like a garden tool.
Yeah.
It's not even my own brand. It's just something else.
Just some random.
Yeah.
That'd be wild.
It would be wild.
So today I wanted to talk to you guys about the concept of like trust, the concept of community.
Okay.
And so there was things on my heart that I was wrestling with and I was thinking about. I was like, I've been in places where I've experienced positions of me questioning other people of like, what are they doing for me? Are they wanting the best for me? Are they really trying to get something out of me? Or are they just trying to use me for a skill or something like a gift that I have? And I have something in me that's just kind of the way I was taught, the way I was growing up, trauma and stuff too, that kind of goes into that. I think that kind of has a thing where it's like, well, I'm always going to question you. I'm always going to like be on your toes about something because I really want to know, like, is this thing the thing you have for me with good intention? And so I was just going to we could popcorn around of like, do you guys have any experiences or any thoughts about what trust is or what that looks like for you or anything you guys want to talk about on that?
You go ahead.
Yeah, you go first.
Let me go first. Okay. So yeah, I think it's a cool topic. I think it's a good topic. I think just to kick it off, so I'm gonna have this is gonna be an interesting conversation because we are all gonna be on very different sides of the spectrum. So this is gonna be fun.
Triforce, bro.
Wait, what'd you say?
The Triforce.
The
bro.
Triforce.
You ever play Zelda, dog?
No, I haven't, but that's awesome. I know what you're talking about, though.
Yeah.
So I said this in a recent podcast, but the way I grew up was very I had like a textbook childhood. So like we're talking about like the ACE score, your adverse childhood experiences score. It measures like the trauma you've been through as a child. Mine is either a 0 or maybe a 1. So I have like a 0.5. And so as far as like trust issues and stuff like that, like working from, I know there's not 0.5s, but as far as like working from a trust issue spot, I haven't experienced that like the way that you have or like Taylor has. And so whenever we've always talked about trust and like how you need to trust people, like I've been in environments, like thank God, where that was always modeled pretty well for me. But one thing I do want to talk about just before we get into maybe some of y'all's stories is like why trust is so important. And we were talking about yesterday because I got to preach yesterday. I had the opportunity to preach and it was really fun. We're talking about how do we get direction in our lives, and we're talking about 3 things. So you watch people. So you watch people who are doing things that are similar to your life, or something that you want in your life, right? People who have fruit in your life that you want. You ask those people questions, which is pretty self-explanatory, but like you want to ask those questions so you get not just what the people are doing, but why they're doing what they're doing. And the third thing, which is the thing that's the hardest thing, is you allow those people to speak into your life.
Yeah.
I think it's really hard for a lot of people to allow people to speak into their life because of trust. And so for me, I haven't had a lot of experiences in my childhood that made it so it wasn't hard for me to trust people. So I hear things like that. And my initial thought, even when I was building the sermon, was like, yeah, people are just going to let's hear that and be like, well, duh, that's the formula. But that third thing can be so hard for people. And so, yeah, what were y'all's experiences like, and how did that play out for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, like, you got a 0.5, I got a 9.
Yeah.
So you failed the A score and I aced it.
Yeah.
So we together make like a C.
Yeah, we do.
That probably means like together we're really healthy.
Yeah, it is. It seems to be that way too.
So I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I got a crazy long history of trust issues. I think we probably well documented it on this podcast a few times, but
Yeah.
you don't get to a 9 on an A score without having a lot of reasons to lack trust. So I pretty much I'm it's just the opposite, right? So I'm almost working from like reasons to trust you, and you're like, what reasons do I have not to trust you?
Yeah, for sure.
So in almost every conversation, if I don't like, we'll rewind it back. In every conversation prior to 9 years ago, coming to the Brick Church, I would be working from the belief you are going to, in some way, like take advantage of me, hurt me, or leverage something against me. That's what relationships were. So like I would have told you, may I wouldn't have said it, but I definitely would have believed it, that relationships are either they're transactional.
Yeah.
So it makes no sense to be in a relationship with you if I'm not in some way benefiting from you. Now, I don't mind giving you something, but there needs to be an exchange of goods or services. And then when that shored up, like I would dip quick. So like I'm quick to cut a relationship. Like that would be my default. So the second I feel like you're getting squirrely, I'm out. Like I would cut ties real quick. So the way that turns out is you're just kind of building these relationships that eventually only benefit you. So you're really not concerned with trying to help people win. It doesn't start that way. It starts with self-protection.
Yeah.
But you blink, and what winds up happening is you're really only building environments and community and relationships where you benefit from. And so that for me is kind of the twinge of like when you are trying to not let yourself get hurt, you wind up creating environments where you hurt the people around you. So that's kind of my experience with trust.
I think for me, it kind of goes on the same thing. I know it was one of y'all. I think it was actually Jared who preached on it. This just kind of got like my head like on like the spin ball of it. Like usually when I hear something, or usually when I get onto a topic, I like to just like dive deep into this thing, and I'll like dive deep into it for like a season or like a whole like week. But for some whatever reason, Jared was preaching on, or Ryan, I don't know, whoever it was, but one of y'all did it, and it was freaking insane. And it was about transactional relationships. Was that Jared? I don't know who it was. Someone was in their bag, and I was like, bro, what? This is crazy. And so, talking about like the transactional relationship sides, I think growing up, I didn't notice it as much, but as like I've grown and matured, I've gone through like therapy sessions and stuff, I've noticed things that are around me in my life that seem more transactional, and they can be just things like in family dynamics. I know early growing up, it was pretty rough. I won't get really into it, but a lot of family dynamics were kind of wild, and so I think that really like dwelled deep into the part where transactional became a thing. And around me, I always felt like people were telling me or asking me for something, but just because I had it, just because I was there, and just because I can make space or I can make time for something, and that they couldn't, or that they didn't have like people or someone to fill the spot. And I always felt like excited to do the thing. Like I always loved to do or help people. But I think when you get in space and a time or in a position where you can look at it and then you can just get into a bad spot even, and you're just thinking, was it good? Were they doing it for my good, or were they doing it for their good? It can get you into like some bad spots. And I think for me, when Jared was preaching or whoever, that brought me back into like my whole like trauma, like childhood, like, oh, whoa, there is actually something more to this. And so Um, my next question for you guys is there anything about community that helped you with trust and develop something strengthened in that?
What would you say? I'm gonna respond to your question with a question.
Okay, I like that.
So when's the last time you found yourself wrestling with the transactional aspect of a relationship?
I won't get too into it because I don't want to like get too like specific about things, but I'd say probably in the last month for sure. Like I still have like the soundtrack playing in my head, and I think it's still something I'm still wrestling through and working out. So I'd say probably last month for sure. I think so.
So what specifically is it you find yourself wrestling with? So let's take that particular moment. What are you finding yourself wrestling with in that?
Probably the intention. Is it good? I probably just put it at that plain state. Is it good for me, or is it good for them at the basis? I believe
is the thing that's being asked of you good for you or good for them?
Which I think it can also be good for both people. But then what like heart posture is it really from?
Yeah, like what's their intent behind the request? Yeah. Okay, so I think for me, that's where the issue usually falls. Because I think we get fixated on trying to read the other person's mind. So what's your intention behind this? What do you want out of me for this? What's the end game in your eyes? When for me, you can never know that answer. I mean, you can ask people, because you still don't know if you're going to trust what they say. I think the rub that I've had to realize is that's a rabbit hole you almost never catch the rabbit in. So you just keep chasing this elusive question of what's their intent? What do they really want out of it? And the better question is not whether or not you could weaponize me or take advantage of me or ask me to do something because it only benefits you. Well, that can be true always. You can have beautiful relationships that go toxic. Yeah. And you have toxic relationships become beautiful. Like it goes both ways. So the issue for me is we're chasing a fear. Like it's all about what I'm scared of. So the whole time where your head's at, where like it's this, I'm trying to not get hurt again. So essentially what we do in those moments is we're hedging our bet. Oh, okay. So it's like, I'm not going to get vulnerable. I'm not going to ask the question I could clearly ask. I'm just going to anticipate that you probably are going to at some point hurt me. So I'm going to keep the walls up. And what do you do when that happens? So you've actually wound up creating the context for the very thing you're afraid of to happen. Wow. So for me, when it comes to who wrestle with trust issues, being someone who does, the better question isn't what is your intent? The better question is what's my intent? So what am I called to do? What do I want? What am I chasing? And that's the better question, because those are the terms that I can control. I can control what I'm inputting into a scenario. I can't control what you do. Yeah. So when I'm coming into a room, or I'm coming into community, or I'm coming into a relationship, or I'm coming to anything that deals with people, the question I need to be asking myself is, what am I trying to get out of it? What am I trying to bring to it? What's the point of me being here? Now, as a worldview of faith, as someone who believes in Jesus passionately, I think that I should be bringing good things into the rooms that I come into. So the question for me is, what am I called to do in every scenario? And we can get lost in the, what's the call of God for my life? What's the great grand vision, the great grand plan? I'm more like, before we get to the 10,000 foot, let's deal with the dots in front of us right now. So what do I know God's called me to do? Because I can look at the word. Yeah. I'm called to be kind. I'm called to be faithful. I'm called to be loving. I'm called to be patient. So am I bringing these ingredients to the relationships, into the moments, into the spaces that I'm occupying? If I'm concerned and fixated on those inputs, 99.9% of the time, we'll be surrounded by the good things that we want. So here's the tension. If I'm worried about your input, I don't even know if I'm bringing a good input. So we're over here telling and assessing people as like, well, they're just, that's just who they are, or people just hurt us. It's like, or did you spend the last 6 months planning for them to? Because what would those relationships look like if your fixation was, how do I bring the most good to the thing God's put in my hand?
Yeah.
Can people still hurt you when you bring good things? Absolutely. They've done it before. They'll do it again. They'll do it tomorrow. It's going to happen again. Like, there's going to be a moment in my life where I do everything I can to bring good and people are still going to hurt me.
Yeah.
That's the nature of humanity. But that's the exception, not the rule. And what we start telling ourselves is this is what life is, when that was always supposed to be the exception. Because what I've now found at 31 that I didn't know at 21, that I didn't know at 16 or 14, is that when I fixate on bringing good to the rooms I'm in, almost always good finds me.
That's good.
But here's what's beautiful about focusing on your input. There are relationships and places that you'll be in that once were bad. And maybe they did have bad intentions, but you bringing the good thing to the room actually steers the person. So I think, to answer your question, for me, it's not so much trying to figure out what's the 3 questions I can ask myself to figure out your intent. It's fixating on my personal input. Because if I'm walking into rooms trying to bring good, good's going to wind up happening. And when it doesn't, I can get out. Why can I get out? Because now I know it's not about you, it's about me.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Right? Because now I know I actually have been putting good inputs. I know I've been faithful. I know I've shown up on time. I know that I've been kind. I know that I've gone out of my way to do good for you. If you're meeting my best inputs with nothing but disrespect or coldness or distance, like, then this isn't a room I want to be in. But you don't know if it's a bad room if you don't know you're bringing the right inputs. And that's why it's crazy.
That's
because we just become dysfunctional people. We keep repeating these broken relationships, and we're never sure they were the bad guy or we're the bad guy because we didn't know what input we brought into the scenario.
Wow.
That's good.
Holy cow.
That's really good.
Just rapping over here, bro. That was insane.
It's a lifetime of trust issues. I'm usually the bad guy in my experience, in case you were curious.
When you're like walking through those scenarios, like I liked what you said, because you were essentially, what you had said at one point is like, even like a good opportunity could be wrapped up in someone having bad intentions for you, and like you can essentially like flip that opportunity if you're coming in with good intentions. How do you know though, like, this is, I know this is ethereal, but like how do you know whenever it is time for me to bail? You know what I mean? Because like because I feel like we can overcorrect and we can go the other way where it's like, okay, I need to work on my trust issues, so I'm going to trust everyone. I'm just going to start, you know what I mean? I'm not going to assess. And I would hate to be in like the other ditch where I'm just always like, well, I want to bring kindness. I want to bring my best. So even when people are walking all over me or whatever, I don't know how many people with trust issues get in that ditch, but do you have like a good way of kind of like assessing like whenever I have gotten too far in that ditch?
When you gotten too far in the ditch of
just letting people walking over me because I'm trying to work on trusting people.
Yeah, so I would say it's a window of tolerance thing. So similar to working out with weights, where you start at, there's a window there, right? Where if I let's say I can comfortably lift 75 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
If I lift 5 pounds every day, I don't get any stronger.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But if I lift 200 pounds every day, I'm going to get injured.
Yeah.
There's a sweet spot in there where I'm lifting 95 every day, and I can't rep as many as I can at 75, but if I'll do 95 every day, eventually I'm going to get stronger. Mm-hmm. I think part of it is learning to assess what your actual window of tolerance is. It's not to use that as an excuse to not stretch yourself, because that thing should get bigger every day.
Yeah.
I should be able to at 31 be able to have more margin for people from a patient standpoint, from a healthy standpoint, than I did at 21. Mm-hmm. And I hope at 41 the same thing will be true, is that I'll have more margin to be able to lay myself aside, if you will, mm-hmm. to be able to love the person in front of me well than I did at 31, because I've matured, I've gotten stronger, I've gotten healthier. Man's opinions mean a little less to me at 41 than they do at 31, so on and so forth. So I think the way you're kind of figuring out is a couple of things. I think the first thing is the motive. Mm-hmm. Why do I want to get out? Mm. I'm just tired of this.
Yeah.
That's not it.
Yeah.
That's not it. I'm upset at them. It's not enough reason.
Yeah.
Right? Because Jesus says we're supposed to love our enemies.
Yeah.
Right? So he doesn't really give us the ability to just be like, well, they're annoying. I don't like them. They're mean. So I don't get to talk to them.
Yeah.
It doesn't really work that way. Also, it's like, I'm just tired of it. It's like, I don't have to tell you, but like Jesus was clearly not about the whole idea of dying on a cross.
Yeah.
Like that's the whole Garden of Gethsemane, right? So like the man sweating blood because he knows what's coming. That is a person who would do everything he could to lay that aside if he could. Hence the reason why he asked his father, hey, if this cup could pass, it'd be real dope.
Yeah.
Like if we could figure out any other way to pull this playoff, please let's do this because I'm not excited about what I'm about to walk through. He still walks through it though.
Yeah.
So I think for me, the biggest thing is trying to figure out your initial motive behind why you want to get out. I'll give you an example. There was a season of my life where I didn't really have any kind of connection with my mom, my grandma, or really any of my immediate family. And that was the godly play. And the reason that was a godly play is because I was worse every single time I was there. Like it was killing me. Like all of the progress that I was trying to do as a husband, as a father, as a pastor, as a human, like I just couldn't do it. Like every step I take forward, when I get around them, it'd be like I take 3 steps back. And so I was becoming worse. I wasn't able to be present for my kids because I was stressed out about my family dynamics and what was going on. Like it was literally killing me. So the reason I stopped seeing them for a season is because I'm dying. Like, and I can see it. Like I can see everywhere. I'm like, everything I touch is worse every time I get around them.
Yeah.
So I could see clearly that what it was doing to me was far worse than what I was doing to it. I wasn't bringing good when I was around them. We were fighting, we were arguing, it was worse. Fast forward about 10 years. Then there was a season where my mom relapsed again. Her grandma was frustrating, and I was just done with it. Like, I was like, this is like, I was like 27, 28. I'm like, I got 3 kids. I'm pastoring a church.
Yeah.
Like I'm around healthy people. Like I just want to deal with this. And what I kept saying to myself is I don't have the margin for this. Like, there's a passage of scripture that says like, don't cast your pearls before swine. And that's what I was saying. And I think that scripture makes sense. I'm going to unpack that. But like what I realized is that the desire to get out wasn't because it was killing me. I just didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
I was fatigued. I was just tired of it. It's 28 years of this. Like,
yeah,
I don't want to mess with it anymore. Yeah. And that's when like I realized that that's not the right motive.
Yeah.
Right. So the way I figured out the motive was wrong is, well, I had people in my life. I remember sitting down with Jared and telling him like, my life would just be so much easier if I just dipped on them all. Kind of just done with it. Like, I just don't like. I got y'all. I got this place. Like, I've supplemented the whole like biological family with my new community, right? Like, I don't want to deal with it. It's like Jared processing with me. It's like that doesn't feel like calling. It feels like frustration. It doesn't sound like God's calling. It's like, well, I did it before. It's like, yeah, because you were called to before.
Yeah.
Because it was crystal clear this thing was killing you. Right now, it just annoys you.
Yeah.
At what point do you mature enough to not let annoyance be the reason you give up on things?
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Dude, that's tough.
Yeah, it is.
It's like, well, that's unfair. Except for no, he saw something in me. He knew I was chasing to be, and I knew what God had called me to. Fast forward today, I've actually got a great relationship with my grandma, my mom. It's there.
Yeah.
But I've got hope it can be better.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah.
Right? Like I've seen God move before. I'll see him move again. And like I have time for them. No, I don't spend every Friday night with them, but I'm also not looking to cut them out the way I thought I did. And the way I got there was I started realizing it's all about the motivation. So to answer your question, I'm a preacher. I took too long. But to answer your question clearly, how do I know when it's time to dip? When I know it's time to cut? How do I keep myself being walked over? You have to be honest about what your motivations behind staying or leaving. Because it goes both ways. Well, I gotta stay. No, you don't have to do anything but die. Like, so the only thing in your life you have to do is stop breathing. Yeah. Like, that's it. Everything else is a choice. Yeah. All right. So I have to stay. You don't have to stay. Yeah. Well, if I don't stay, then, what's going to happen to them? I don't know. But like, that's a fear motivation, right? So like, it goes like people cut early or they stay too long. Yeah. in both situations, you got to figure out what your reason for staying is. Because I've seen people stay in relationships. I've stayed in relationships that are legitimately harmful for me because I'm afraid of what would happen if I left.
Yeah.
Or what they would do if I'm not here.
Yeah.
It's like, well, that's not my responsibility.
Yeah.
Like, I can't control what you do, but I also can't lay my life down and not do what I was put on earth to do for the sake of hopefully you being a healthy human being. It's like setting yourself on fire to keep you warm. Both sides of that coin, it's the same question. Both sides. It's whether or not your motivation is the right motivation. So that's what you have to chase. Is you have to assess, why am I staying? Why am I trying to leave? And if that a motivation is a healthy one, and the way you know something's healthy is it's pointing towards hope.
Yeah.
I have hope for the person I'm going to become if I make this step.
Yeah.
I have hope for the person they'll become if I make this step. I have hope for what the relationship can be if I make this step. That's the criteria. The kicker, though, is when you're so in the weeds, sometimes you can't reach your motivation right. That's where the community part comes in.
Yeah.
I mean, even now, like, I was having a conversation 3 months ago with Ryan and Jared, and it's like, I didn't realize at the time that my motivation was off. Kind of told you going in, I told you in the middle of the conversation, I told you after the conversation, like, no, like, I'm fighting for what God's called me to. Time passed, conversations passed, I realized, like, no, my motivation was off.
Yeah.
But I couldn't see it. Like, I couldn't see it. I'd have passed a lie detector test, I promise you. Motivation was great. But on the back end, 2 men that I trust, my community, the people God's put in my life to lead, develop, shot me straight. And it was uncomfortable and it sucked and it hurt, but it was true. And I was able to make the shift. And my motivation's back, and I got a healthier viewpoint on it. But you have to have people, because at some point in your life, you are not going to see you clearly.
Yeah.
And in fact, I would argue most of your life, I don't think you'll see you clearly.
Yeah.
Which is why healthy community matters.
So off of that, I think one of, like, unfortunately, one of the biggest things about when we break trust with people, like, one of the biggest things that someone breaking your trust will cost you is your confidence in humanity. And so you can get to a place where you start
That's so good.
looking at people and you're like, and especially when you're a kid and you're going through it, because the only model you have for what a person is are the people raising you. And so when you have the people that are raising you, the people that are like literally your world, breaking your trust, then you just start to assume every person is like this. And like we kind of broke that down at the beginning, but that kind of makes me, like, you're putting such an emphasis on community and how good it is for you and how it's helped you walk back to hope so many times. When you have walked through things that get you to a place where I don't have confidence in humanity anymore, how do you even get started going back towards community? And how have you guys done that? And how do you think you could walk someone through that who hasn't done that yet?
That's really good. So your question is to take the next step back into trust, or back into
how did you, so with all of your trust issues, with everything that you've talked about, how did you get plugged into community, and what did that do for you?
I think almost kind of like what you said, Taylor. Like, you kind of have to shift your narrative about some things. I guess my question with that too, would you say that trust is a mindset that we have to take care of?
I think trust is like a bank.
Okay.
You are either depositing or withdrawing, but there's no neutral. Or, like, you can't put money in a bank and it stay the same. You're either accruing interest on it or you're pulling money out of it. That's the way that works.
Yeah.
Trust is the same way. So, like, you are either building it or you're pulling away from it. And I think it's a mindset in the sense that, like, I think trust is a tactile thing. Like, it's not ethereal in the sense that, like, I think it can be measured. You know how much you trust someone based on what you're willing to give them control of. Right. So I trust my wife, and the way I know I trust my wife is she has all the access to my bank accounts. I mean, she could cripple me if she wanted to. Like, I trust my wife. I trust my wife because I sleep next to her every night.
Yeah.
She could kill me in my sleep if she wanted to.
Yeah.
Like, I trust her because she has control over things in my life.
Yeah, that's good.
You can measure trust. And the way you measure it is you ask yourself, what do I willingly give control over to?
Wow.
Because you don't trust community until you are willing to lay yourself aside for it.
Whoa.
So I trust Jared Callahan, our lead pastor. I trust Ryan Gray, our associate pastor. because even when I don't want to, I will lay my will aside because I trust that they have my best interest at heart. I know my son and daughters trust me when I ask them to do something. And even when they don't want to do it, they believe I've got their best at heart because they'll follow through with it. We trust God because we submit to his ways, even when we don't always fully understand them. That's trust. Trust is measurable, right? And so to answer your question, how do you get back into it? I think at some point you have to assess what I'm doing is not working. And I think that's the problem. Like, the reason, excuse me, allergies are whooping my butt, and I have Tourette's, really bad combo. So the reason most people have a hard time, and I think it's fair to say most people have a hard time getting into community, is because they still don't believe they need it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right? They think that there's a universe in which they can get healthy enough, strong enough, smart enough, resource enough. I mean, input, whatever. The people who don't want to step back into community do not presently believe it's necessary. The reason I got back into community is because at some point I realized I cannot do this by myself.
Yeah.
Now, people like myself who burn bridges faster than they can build them sometimes, I got to that hole quicker than some. And one of the saddest things for me is, like, there are people who are like naturally kind or they're not conflict people, and so their gap can extend a lifetime because they're not really creating just enough pain. They just know they're not satisfied, which is almost scarier to me than the person like myself who just burns things to the ground, because, like, I get there quicker. So at some point I looked around, I felt like my family was falling through my hands because I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. I didn't know what I was going to do with my call. I thought everything I was spent the last 4 years building fell apart. And it was clear to me I need something different. I think the trick is getting people to that place. And the way we arrive to that is so individualized and it's so unique. And there are circumstances around it. But for me, that's the trick. The reason I was stepping back into community is because I realized I need it. And I think as long as people entertain community is something you can take or leave, then you don't ever get the benefit, because, like I said a second ago, you don't actually trust it. The way you know you trust something is based off of the degree that you will willingly give power or control away to.
That's good. To answer your question, I'd say for me, trust is almost kind of like a calling step. And obviously it's not like I'm going to trust like everything around me. I'm going to trust the things that I know that God has put in front of me, that God has put his hand on, his God stamp on. And I think even in those moments, it is kind of like an insurance of, like, God is like, I'm going to put my faith and trust in him, know that where his stamp is, his approval, and stay in this lane. Because I think once we do, we'll see things that we can't even think, imagine, or dream of, things that we were prepared to do long ago. And I think community is the center of that. And I think when we do have the right people, the right place, and we put our insurance and our trust in it to live the call out like that, I think that is what really holds me to trust, what really gets me back in there. And so that would be my answer for you.
Yeah. It's crazy because what you're saying is, what I heard you just say is, you trust the things that God has put his stamp of approval on. And, like, we have, like, just to break that down a little bit, the way that we normally see, like, God's stamp of approval is we look for, like, things like the fruit of the Spirit on things, right? So, like, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness. I know I'm missing some, all those things. But like we look for those things in that stuff, in people, in the places that God has us in, and that's when we're like, okay, it looks like God is here, and we trust those things. But then what you said is, like, one of the ways you keep trust in front of you is by trusting people. What does it look like? What does your story specifically look like when it comes to learning how to trust people? Like what did that look like for you? How did you go from not trusting people to trusting people?
I think the best answer I have for you at the moment would probably be staying here, probably. I think staying here and knowing that there is more, knowing that there is something to the other side of the coin, and just sitting in the place to position yourself and look at what you got, the stats, the playbook. Like, I got people, I've seen the evidence of it. They love me, they care for me, they want the best for me. And with the things and the facts of what they have done for me, speaking life into me, giving me things, giving me moments and opportunities, I think when you sit down and you get to lay out all the cards you have in front of you, I think you're going to find, like, your heart be like, well, I think I can. Like, I think I can trust these people. I think this place, like the Brick Church, has done that for me, has been community. It's been, like, the center of, like, what everything about the church should be, and has done for me. So
That's really good. I think one of the things interesting to me when we tackle the topic of trust, community, humanity, it's like I think part of it is like we're called to dream for things that we've never seen before. Like I think that's part of humanity. That's why we have technology. Is like there's just something God designed us to like imagine futures that don't exist. But we also have like TV and movies and Hollywood, and I think what winds up happening is we chase like this super idealistic version of friendship and relationship and community that's just not, it's not real. Like it's this fake version, and then you pair that with like social media, so like you see everybody's presented life and you don't see flaws. You see all the right things that they want you to see, and some people are winning. It's not to say that everyone on Instagram is lying about who they are. It's just you don't generally post the sad moments, like just you know, like it's not everyone's MO. So you see a lot of hope, a lot of life, and it's like then you compare it to your present reality, and you feel the tension inside of all that. And it's because I think one of the biggest things that get in the way of building trust, of being in community, of having healthy relationships, is just uber unrealistic expectations. Because we're not baking pain into the equation. So we want all of our relationships to be up and to the right. We want all of our community to be up and to the right. We want every job to be up and to the right. And so we don't want bad things, and we only want good things. And what winds up happening is we only have a palate for the good. So when bad shows up, we just unilaterally assess this as, oh, this is broken. This is flawed. When sometimes it's just seasonal. Like I'm growing gardens in my backyard. Like we're legit trying to build a daggum vegetable forest back there.
That's good.
And these plants have seasons. So there are seasons where the fruit it's born and it's growing like crazy. So then you have the winter where it goes dormant. The same potential's in the soil. Okay, there's nothing wrong with the soil. All that same nutrients is in there. It's just the environment, the climate, the reality of the moment, the season is not specifically conditioned for the growth. But if you'll give it time, that season's going to come back around. And I think what we don't do is give people time. We simultaneously expect them to be perfect, and when they aren't perfect, we don't give any margin to see their own growth. So it's like interesting to me when we're going into relationships where we expect people to be perfect. They can't be. It's an unfair expectation. So then you get in and it's like, oh, I'm a human. Well, you're a human too. What an unfair standard to place on some people. Like I'll have people like conversations with people at the church, and it's like the church did this or these people did that or they failed me here. And it's like, I don't want to like minimize the fact that it's painful. Like that's like people do take advantage of us, but also it's like, well, and you did this, you know, and you've hurt people and I've hurt people. And it's like, what did we expect? Like we're supposed to chase perfection. Maybe. We're supposed to chase love. And you know you love something based off what you're willing to sacrifice it. The reason that we know Jesus loves us is because he willingly gave his life for us. If that's the barometer by which love is, that means we should probably bake a little bit into the equation. Now, again, I'm not saying set yourself on fire to keep it warm. I'm just saying, like, if you have a bad day, a bad week, shoot, even a bad month, does that specifically always mean that the situation is broken?
Right.
Or does that just mean like give it some time?
Yeah.
Ask some questions maybe. I think like it's kind of tangential and I'm not being super specific. So let me try to make that a little bit clearer. I think if you want to be in a healthy community, you need to do two things. You need to have appropriate expectations, meaning people have the ability to be beautifully and wonderfully kind and amazing, and they have the ability to be the exact opposite of that.
Yeah.
And we need to be able to understand that there's not a relationship we'll have this side of heaven that at some point will not disappoint us.
Yeah.
That is the human reality. That is the part of living in a broken world. That's part of having flesh and unhealthy desires. Like, you don't get out of that. You don't bake yourself out of that. I'm going to fail my kids. I have no desire to fail my kids. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
Because I'm a human being. So you need to have appropriate expectations that it's not always going to be sunshine and roses. And then simultaneously, you need to assess if this relationship, if this community, if this person is worth the pain.
Yeah.
Is the hope of what we're trying to build worth the grit it will take to push through the hard seasons?
Yeah, for sure.
Right? Is the fruit I'm going to grow this season worth the work of tending to the soil while the sun isn't shining yet?
Yeah.
Right? Like, I had to start the seeds before it was season time. Right? So I've got in my garden right now all of the vegetables I plan on planting in 7 weeks. They're growing right now. They're not outside.
Yeah.
They're in an incubator. They're in an environment that is conducive for that soil so the potential of that seed can grow, but it's not ready outside yet.
Yeah.
And if I put this seed out there right now, it's going to fail. But it's not the seed's fault. It's my fault for putting something on it wasn't ready for. But if I'll give it time, if I'll take care of it, in 6-7 weeks, when those things go in that soil, they're going to produce much fruit. But I had to understand that there was a work that it was going to take for that seed to reach potential before it ever got put in my garden.
Yeah.
And in the communities that you want to walk into, the relationships you want to create, the life you want to have, before you sign up for something, you need to assess the cost.
Yeah.
Do I have an accurate expectation of what this is going to look like? And am I willing to pay the price?
Yeah.
And if you aren't, it's not the thing's fault.
Yeah.
It's your fault.
Yeah.
So don't ever step into it.
Yeah.
Wait for the moment. Does that mean you should never try? No, you should try. I'm just saying, if you step into it too early and you get burned by it, that's not on them. It's on you.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
So count the cost.
Well, what do you think? If I'm looking for community, obviously, if you're listening to the podcast and you're in the Muskogee area, we think that we have a great community for you to join at the Brick Church at 1302 South York Street. So come hang out with us.
Come on with it.
We'd love to have you here.
We're not biased at all.
We're not biased at all. No. Like there's no bias. No, nothing like that. This is objective. But if I'm listening to the podcast, maybe I'm somewhere else, maybe like I can't get plugged in here. What do I look for in a community? Like what are the things? Like is there like a list? I know it's like it's specific, but like what can I look for healthy community? What are some things I can look for?
That's good.
Yeah, I think you nailed it in the sermon that you recap, man. If I'm trying to get into community, like so I'll add one step. I think the first step is you have to decide if you want it. Like, don't let somebody guilt you into showing up to anything.
Yeah.
Like, because it's already ruined.
Yeah.
Like, so if someone guilts you to come to church, you have a bad time. Like, well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
You didn't come because you wanted something. If someone guilts you into paying for dinner,
yeah,
and you hated the dinner, well, it makes sense. Like, someone guilted you into it. So, like, I think the first step is assess that you actually want the thing, which obviously you do if you're asking that question. But it's just very important. Like, do you actually want it, or did you get told to do it? So, do you want the community? Once you got there, I think the next step is looking at the community.
Yeah.
Like, just look at it. Like not just church, man. Like, I'm talking about jobs.
Yeah.
Like, I can't tell you how many times I've had conversations with people. It's like, this is the worst job ever. It's like, oh, that's wild. And they'll list all the things they hate about it. It's like, so when you were like interviewing for it, did you ask any of those questions? Like, nah.
Yeah.
Cause like, what'd you do? Like, I was the first job that came available. It's like, and don't get me wrong, make money. If you're gonna make money, go make money. I'm just saying, like, if you came into it, can you ask any questions and it's a crazy place, like, maybe at the next job, ask a few questions for you to show up. So that's what I would say. Like if you're trying to find a healthy community of people, look at it before you step in it. Ask questions to people who attend it. Look at the kind of people they are. Look at how they handle themselves, the kind of conversations they're having, because that says a lot. So if you look at the community and it seems healthy, however you define that, but if it looks like a good place, then I think that second question is what you hit. I guess that's third technically. So do you want it? Look to see it. And the second one is
ask questions.
Ask questions. So like what you really need to do is then get in the weeds. So it's one thing to look pretty. It's another thing to actually be pretty. Like it's one thing to look healthy. It's another thing to actually be healthy. So look at the community, assess. Does it look like a healthy place? Once you get in it, that's really where like I would legitimately get into some questions. Like I'd find people and be like, how long you been attending this church? Like if we're talking to church specific, how long you been attending it? I've been in here 6 years. Tell me about it. This place sucks. Wow. Wow. Why are you still here? Like, okay, I'm not coming. Right? Like, I want to know. Or someone's like, it's the most amazing place I've ever been in my life. How long you been here? 2 weeks.
You're right.
I'm
gonna go talk to someone else.
I'm gonna go to somebody else. I'm gonna go find the 6-year guy, right? But it would be like that with everything, right? Like the job. When I got in the job, I'd ask people who worked there, like, do y'all like working here? Like, how does it feel? Like, what do you think about the owners, the people who run this place, the manager? Like, what do you think about it? If I were to try to build it outside of that, whether it's like a mom hiking group, right? Like, or like a pickleball group, or like, there's 1,000 places you can build community.
For sure.
You just it's not enough, in my opinion, for something to look good. I need to find out if it actually is. That's where you start asking questions, and then once you've hit those first two, it's time to show up. Right. It's time to show up. It's time to get in the room and see what it's like, and then start allowing it to affect you. And then the last step is assessing that. Right. So like in your sermon, it was like, look at them, ask questions, and at some point you gotta let them speak into your life. Right. So at some point you got to get in the community, whatever it looks like, whether it be a church, whether it be a job, whether it be friendships, whether it be groups, whatever your community is. At some point, you have to start allowing it to speak into your life, and then you assess how that feels.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right, so if I get to the Brick Church, and you attend our church, and you sit in here for 6 weeks, and you feel like what we're telling you, leading you to do, the environments we're creating are bad for you, dip. Like, if you're worse for being here, don't stay. But that, for me, is the 3 tiers. So it's like, I got to look. Like you said in the sermon, man, I got to look to see if it's healthy. If I think it is, then I got to actually find out by asking some questions about the place. And that third one is really important. All right, then I got to get in it. Like I got to be a part of this thing. And that's where I think that's where the trust thing comes in. It's like, well, I was there. Were you there? Like, were you ever really a part? Like, I can't tell. Like, I've been this person. I've had conversations with this person. So I've got all the empathy in the world. But like, I was at that church and they didn't love me well, or they weren't there for me. Were they? Like, did you ever show up to anything? You know what I mean? Did you ask any questions? Did you invite anybody? Right? Like, I mean, think about like how wild it would be if I was just to go grab like, Sarah Beth in the lobby and be like, hey, like, would you change this about your life? Like, girl, I don't even know who you are. Like, that'd be the wildest cold turkey call in the world. Yet, like, we're upset that people aren't in our life and routine. It's like, no, you got to invite people, man. Like, so it's like, at least for the church people specifically, like, if you just attend, but you're never a part, and then you are upset that the church didn't do something for it, you never got into the community. You looked at it, you might have asked some questions, but you never let it speak into you. You weren't a part of it. And that third part's essential. And I can't tell you how many times I've been in relationships, I've had friendships, I've walked people through where it's like, they never really loved me. It's like, no, you never really gave yourself to them. Like, so many marriages fail and so many relationships end. And our narrative coming out of it is they never loved me. It's like, did they? Or did you never give yourself to them? Right? Like, I would have told you at portions of our marriage early on with Nicole and I that, like, she doesn't appreciate me. But I can look back now and be like, I wasn't available. I never dropped the guard to ever let her speak to the insecurities I actually had. Thank God we do that now. But I would have given you a narrative that would have said, like, nah, she doesn't love me the way I want. It's like, no, man, you weren't available. you didn't actually give yourself up to her. Like, you didn't drop your guards. You weren't fully you in front of her, so she couldn't fully love you the way you wanted.
Yeah.
So that third one matters.
Yeah, that's so good, bro. I love that. I think that third one for me was like the actually letting the thing affect you was like honestly what got me to see that Jesus is who he says he is. And I know we're talking about community, but like I think that plays out with people and with Jesus. Like it's like I made up my mind at one point, like when Jared talks about taking a step in the sermon, I'm going to take the step and just see. Like
It's good.
Worst case scenario,
Really
it doesn't
That's
work.
good.
And best case scenario, I just found out Jesus is like the savior of the world. And I think it's the same way with people. It's like obviously don't let them, have your bank account right off the bat. Like you were saying, like it's like putting deposits in. Don't let them, like the first step I take with you isn't to give you my bank account and see how well you do with it. But the first step I take with you is maybe be like, hey, what advice do you have on, this thing in my life? And just see like how that goes. Or like, hey, do you want to come hang out and just see, do I feel better after we hang out or do I feel worse after we hang out?
That's so good. Scrooge says, taste and see if the fruit is good.
Yes. Yep. That's it.
Jesus is who he says he is or he isn't.
Yeah.
The church is the hope of the world or it isn't.
Yeah.
Like, this place is healthy or it isn't.
Yeah.
Like, it just is. Like, like, and the way you got to measure it over time.
Yeah.
And trust is built like slowly.
Yeah.
Right. They say it's like it's built in like trust is like built in drops, lost in buckets. Right.
Yeah.
Like it takes time.
Yeah.
It takes time. So like you're saying, it really is like start small.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I'm not saying that you should step into any community and just blindly follow everything they say. Try something small.
Yeah.
And you just stack that over time and you taste and see if it's good.
Yeah.
So whatever that next step looks like, you have to do that. But I think that's where it is. We don't want to lose control. Well, the reason we don't lose control is because we don't trust.
Yeah.
But it's wild because you can't ever get trust back unless you're willing to risk again, which is why it goes all the way back to, do you believe you need it or not?
Yeah.
And until you believe this thing is good and is necessary, you just won't do the work.
Yeah.
And I can pitch community to you all day long, and I will for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I will pitch to you that, yes, humanity is frustrating and it can create more pain than anything else, but it also has the ability to heal in ways nothing else can.
Yeah.
Like, it's this beautiful thing that is simultaneously absolutely able to hurt you, but can be the most healing thing in the world. And the beauty of the healing is worth the chance of the pain.
Absolutely.
And you have to decide for yourself, that's worth it. So I can give you steps. I can walk you through ideas. I can tell stories all day long. But until you dictate in your own soul, I am better with people, none of this matters.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so good, bro. I think it's a good spot to end this thing. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for joining us on this. Bro, I'm just so excited the podcast is back. I'm having such a good time. This has been really good conversations. Yeah, it's good for mine too.
Even when
bro.
I'm stopped up.
Yeah.
I'm still about it.
Yeah.
I'm still about it.
Getting to hang out with y'all, talk with y'all. It's been a great time. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you guys for talking with us today. If you have been listening and you are still here, thank you for being here. We appreciate you tuning in. Like, subscribe, comment on this thing. It helps us out a lot. And we love you guys so much. We will see y'all in the next episode.
Love y'all.